多くの方が証明しているのは、みんなの神宮外苑を愛していることの証拠だと思います。証明者のコメントのファイルも入ってます、USB に。この再開発計画をこのまま強行すれば、神宮外苑を破壊した都知事として皆の記憶に残ります。多くの人にとって神宮外苑は本当に特別な場所です。この証明をサポートしている、8万人以上の人が熱心に守ってほしいですので、それは本当にそれでいいのかを深く考えていただきたいんですね。
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to welcome Rochelle Kopp to our interview today. Rochelle is a consultant, has many experience, about 25 years experience for Japan and foreign culture, international culture exchange experience. And she is, as a founder of the consultant company. And please, Rochelle, if you could introduce us about what you do, that would be great.
No, thanks so much, and thanks for having me today. So yes, I'm a management consultant, and I specialize in communication between Japanese and people from other cultures in the workplace. And my main activity that I do is I teach seminars and do team building workshops and do coaching, both with foreign firms that are doing business in Japan and Japanese firms that are doing business globally.
Thank you so much. And today, the main reason I would like to interview you is because I know that you are doing this a big project, a petition, and trying to stop something. So if you could tell us a little bit about what is going on and how we can do to help preventing this happen, that would be great.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so what we'll focus on today is sort of a kind of a side activity of mine that's taken on a life of its own, and that is trying to stop the redevelopment plan at Jingu Gayan, which is a large park in Tokyo. This is actually my second petition and my second run-in with Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike. The first one was last year in the run-up to the Olympics.
Yes.
There was a plan that I learned about on Twitter, because I find out about everything on Twitter because I'm a Twitter addict. There was a plan to develop a public viewing site in the middle of Yoyogi Park, which was going to be a giant stage and screens so that thousands of people could gather and watch the Olympics projected onto the screen.
I see.
Which might have been fun in some other time, but not really a great idea to do in the middle of a pandemic.
Exactly.
And they were planning to be lopping off the limbs of the trees below 5 meters, which is actually pretty high. And just to figuring all these trees in order to build this facility and jam it in the middle of the park. And I thought, well, this really does not sound like a good idea, either from a pandemic prevention perspective or an ecological perspective.
Yeah.
And so I started a change.org petition. I thought, why not try it? It was a method that is getting more attention in Japan. And I thought, well, how many people are really going to care about this? Well, I ended up with over 150,000 signatures. And I spent an entire week, I couldn't get any work done because I was on like half a dozen TV shows and reporters were calling me up every 2 seconds. And it became this huge thing. And we got the city to partially back down. They did do the tree branch cutting, but they did less than they originally had expected to. They did the bare minimum. And they didn't hold the public viewing. They still built the facility and they used it as a vaccination station.
Ah, that is wonderful. Oh, oh wow. That is really good. So the facility is still there. It is just like a
No,
permanent thing.
it
Oh,
was just a temporary
oh,
facility.
okay.
And
Okay.
so they put it up and they said, well, we're going to use it for as a place to give vaccinations. And then if things aren't too bad with the pandemic, we might use it for public viewing during the
Right.
Paralympics. But
Oh,
then, of course,
okay.
they couldn't do it.
Yeah, I
So,
see, I see. Wow, that
so
that is a major like an event for you to do
yeah,
too.
it was a
Yeah.
big victory, right? And so
Yeah.
then what happened with
Mhm.
this plan at Jingu Gayan is that it was approved by the city planning council in the beginning of February. And at
Oh,
that
I
time,
see.
both myself and lots of other people from Tokyo were hearing about it for the first time.
Hmm.
And wait, what? There's this big plan and it just got approved. No one's talked about it. And oh, almost 1,000 trees are going to get chopped down. Why isn't this being discussed? And I realized from what I'd done last year with Yoyogi Park that I had access to contact 150,000 people who cared about trees in Tokyo parks. And I thought, well, maybe they'll care about 1,000 trees in Jingu Gaien being completely chopped down, not just having limbs chopped off. And so that's how I started the petition. And I actually have a few slides I can share with you a little bit
Yes.
about this park. So let me just find where did my, sorry, I'm just looking for where my slide is.
No problem.
Okay, here we are. Okay, so let me put this so you can see it better. And I'll just share with you a little bit about what is this park and what's there and what is the actual plan and a little bit about how it came about. So Jingu Gaien was Japan's first landscape conservation area. And so it was created in 1926. And it's called Jingu Gayan because it's part of Meiji Jingu. So it's actually owned by the shrine, most of the property there. And you've probably been to the Meiji Jingu main shrine that has the big, gorgeous forest. Well, Jingu, that's called the Nyan or the inner garden. And Gayan is the outer garden. And they were created at the same time. And it was actually a gift from the emperor to the shrine of this land. And they got people to make donations. People sent trees from all over the country, and in fact, all over the world. People sent trees, and they also contributed their physical labor to build both the Nyan and the Gayan gardens. So it's got a real history, and it's a beautiful green place, as you'll see in some of these pictures. A lot of people know it best for there's 4 rows of ginkgo trees. And so here's a picture of 2 of them. And on either side of the street, so there's 2 tunnels, these really huge, beautiful ginkgo tree tunnels. And in fact, there was an article where they ranked the best tree tunnels in the world, and it was considered number 3.
Yeah, it's
So
beautiful.
it's a pretty well-known tourist spot. Just because it's so beautiful. Also, it was interesting. I was talking to someone recently who does a lot of business in Asia, who said that often karaoke songs that are from Japan show pictures of famous spots in Tokyo, and the Ginkgo Avenue always shows up. So he said there's when Japan's borders are open to tourists, there are often busloads of tourists from Asia who this is one stop on their itinerary because they've seen it on the karaoke background, which I thought was very funny. So this is an aerial view. Now, the part that's in color is the part that is slated for redevelopment. The part that you see in gray, particularly on the right and in the foreground, those are also part of the park, but they won't be changed by this project. But this is what's here. And so I'll show you a little more details, but basically there's a rugby stadium, there's 2 baseball stadiums. The second smaller one is also used as a golf practice driving range. There's a batting dome. There are 6 softball fields. There's a football court and futsal court and an indoor ball stadium and 4 cafes and also a tennis club. So there's over 1,500 trees. So there's a lot of stuff packed into this space. And it's a real kind of destination for people in Tokyo. But because it's a large green space in the center of the city, it's become a target for redevelopment. And the first part of that is the big white ring that you see at the right, which is the new national stadium that was built for the Olympics. And in fact, some people say that the 2020 Tokyo Olympics were actually just an excuse to redevelop Jingu Gayan Park, because it's this big green space right in the middle of the city. Like, oh, we can put stuff there that makes money. So there were height restrictions on the area because it's a landscape designated area that were removed for the Olympics. And they didn't just remove it for where they were going to put the national stadium. They just happened to remove it for the whole thing. So let's take a look at what's going to happen as a result of this redevelopment. Everything I've marked in red here is going away. So the areas that have the outlines and then cross hatches, those are trees that are being removed. And then where the X's are, those are sports facilities that are being removed. So you can see that there's quite a lot that will be changing, things that are going to go away as a result of this plan. So first of all, trees. Some of the trees are huge, like these ones. You can see people at the bottom for scale, how giant these trees are. A lot of them, were planted at the time, nearly 100 years ago, that this park was created. And the government is saying, oh, well, we're going to preserve the trees. Well, you can't preserve the trees if, according to the map, you're putting a building where the tree is, or a private tennis club, which is one of the things that's going to happen. And they're like, oh, well, we'll transplant them. Okay, look at the size of these trees. Do you think that that is really going to be easily transplanted? I don't think so. And in fact, when the new national stadium was built, they also promised to transplant trees. There were 1,500 trees that were chopped down for the new national stadium. So already a lot of Jingu Gayan's forest has already been taken away. And they did do some transplanting. And this is just a picture I took on the left a couple months ago. This is near the new national stadium. And this is a monument to something that happened during World War II. And you can see this tree on the left. I mean, it is completely dead. And also just, there's not really much left of it. When they do tree transplanting in Japan, they lop off the limbs. It's like major surgery. These transplanted trees look like soldiers after battle. They're really not in good shape. And you can see on the right, when I was there the other day, they had chopped it down because it was just dead. And a tree expert has said that of the trees that were transplanted for the new national stadium, only 3 of them are in decent shape. So it's not so easy. Oh, we're just going to transplant them. It's really pretty much tantamount to killing them. One of the other features of the area is the historic Jingu Stadium. And it's one of 3 remaining stadiums where Babe Ruth played. The other 2 are Fenway Park and Wrigley Field in the United States. Now, I'm from Chicago, and I used to live near Wrigley Field for a long time, actually. And if anyone who's familiar with Chicago and Wrigley Field, it is a gem of the city. They have fixed it up really nicely, but it still maintains its historical flavor as a ballpark. And people love that old-fashioned feel. It's different than the modern stadiums. And indeed, people in Japan love Jingu Stadium. And recently they named it, actually I have to update this. I said 3rd here, I have to change the slide. It was 2nd, I had that wrong. It's their 2nd favorite baseball stadium in the country. So if so many fans love this stadium, why would you tear it down? It really does make no sense. It really should be named as a landmark. Right next to it is the Chichibunomiya Rugby Stadium, which also is historic, and it's viewed as quote unquote sacred ground by Japanese rugby fans due to its historical role. It was one of the first places where rugby started to be played again after the war. It really goes back. And I've been told by rugby fans that they really like being close to the action. See how close to the field everyone is sitting here in this photo. And the plan for the new rugby stadium is to be domed, but actually rugby fans tell me that that's kind of a sacrilege, because for rugby, playing in any weather condition is part of the game. And there are famous famous games where it snowed or it sleeted,
muddy, all that.
And then players toughed it out. It's kind of part of the whole rugby culture. So you don't really want to put a dome onto a rugby stadium. So a lot of rugby fans would, again, really just prefer it be renovated rather than removed. There are lots of other sports facilities, including softball fields like this one, that are beloved by the public and also are pretty rare in downtown Tokyo. And the softball fields, the golf driving range, the batting dome, etc., they're all in keeping with the original mission of Jingu Gaien to be a place of recreation. The main Meiji shrine, the Naien, or the Indra Garden, which is that huge forest, was meant to be a kind of a severe, meditative, contemplative forest, whereas Jingu Gayan was meant to be a place for recreation, to have fun, and sports was a big part of that. So it's really the historic mission of the area. And again, people have lots of great memories of sports being done in those places. There are also several cafes, 3 of them next to the Ginkgo Avenue, and then there's another one near the sports facilities and the baseball stadium. And the ones next to the Ginkgo Avenue, if you've ever been over there, it's like European kind of flavor. It's a place where you have a sense of place. And lots of people go there for casual meals, but also people often hold parties like wedding receptions there. So they're very popular, and it's kind of ridiculous to me. This whole plan is being touted as machi zukuri, which is this Japanese bureaucratic word meaning, well, we're going to create urbanness. Well, why would you've got great urbanness right there, and that you're just going to tear that down to create urbanness? It really does make no sense. So what is it they're trying to do? They want to make room for high-rise commercial buildings. So this little movie gives you a sense of what's going in. So you see there the large new modern baseball stadium with a hotel attached, 2 tall buildings. Then in the front is the rugby stadium, then a smaller commercial building. Then over on the left, the tennis courts are being moved, because where the tennis courts are now is where the new Jingu baseball stadium is going to be. So they have to move the tennis courts, and they're putting it in front of the Meiji Picture Gallery there. And when they do that, that's a lot of what takes away a lot of the trees and a lot of the sports facilities. So basically what they're doing is they're cramming as much stuff into this space as possible. And that orange space right there that you can see, that's parkland that's being given to private concerns. So it's just like, oh, we're giving away part of the park, which is, public property, so they can build tall buildings there. So it's again, someone was salivating over, hey, we can put tall buildings in this place that doesn't have them and make money. And so they kind of disregarded anything that's actually in the park there, no matter how historic or beloved, so that they could shove all this stuff in there. And as part of it, they're putting the baseball stadium right up against the Ginkgo Avenue on the left there. You can see the Ginkgo Avenue is kind of a light green. Yeah. And I'll talk in a minute about why that's problematic. But you can see it's just shoving stuff in there. And they're like, oh, it's going to be a green oasis. And like, no, it's not. It's going to be a forest of tall buildings. No, it's just crazy. So when I heard about this plan, I'm like, this is just too ridiculous. And someone has to say something about this. And me, as a non-Japanese and being my own boss, I have some freedom to speak out about things that maybe a lot of people don't. Like, why don't I actually see if I can help this situation? So that was sort of my motivation. Other things that people have been annoyed about, this is one of the pictures from the developer's website that describes what's going to happen in this project. I swear this looks exactly like the duty-free shops in the Thailand, Bangkok airport to me. That's like what I saw when I said it. And a lot of Japanese have been saying it looks just like Lalaport, which is a big Japanese shopping mall. And you're going to cut down trees so you can make room for this. It really does make no sense.
Yeah.
So then it's just such a, I guess the word I want to say, trite or hackneyed or unoriginal, no sense of place, right? And then I mentioned about the baseball stadium being right next to the Ginkgo Avenue. So here's the Ginkgo Avenue, and you can see they're wedging the baseball stadium in right next to the trees. So there's a bunch of problems. One, experts say that the roots are going to be damaged if you have the baseball stadium that close. Two, there's going to be light from the stadium lights, which evidently is not good for trees. You ruin the quiet atmosphere of the area because you're going to have all the baseball noise right there next to it. And where the wall of the stadium is right here, you can see on the left, this is where the cafes are now. So they're all getting demolished to make a wall. It really is just, ridiculous. For one of the, nicer places in Tokyo, why would you ruin it in this way? So a lot of people are very upset about this plan. I'll stop before I go on and just see if you have any comments or questions.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for, sharing all these in very detail. And I did live in Japan when I was small for about 5 years. And every time when I go back and visit, I always feel like something is new coming up, and everywhere of the city, it is exciting to see the change. But at the same time, hearing these this old spot of Tokyo is being remodeled or it's gonna close, and then you're taking away the historical part of it. And I know that Japanese loves baseball, and knowing that a historical most loved stadium is going to be taken down, it is just shocking. And now just my first impression was, oh, it is just about the money that they want, but it is already pretty much built up, Tokyo itself. And
it's an excellent point. Yes.
Yeah.
And more development is already planned in other places. Yes.
And Olympic already has built that huge stadium over there, and they want to keep building, but if this gets approved, I feel like they will take advantage of the remaining part as well, just to push it out. And in the end, we don't see any greenery in the city of Tokyo anymore. So that is definitely something that I don't want to see, and hoping to can still have people to visit this quiet scenery spot that really gives a really good taste of a different side of Tokyo.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a sense of place. And talking, for example, I talked the other day to Robert Whiting. He's the author of The Chrysanthemum and the Bad, and You Gotta Have Wa. And he's lived in Tokyo since before I was born. And he said, as a longtime Tokyo resident, one of the things that really disappoints him is how readily historical things get torn down. And that there's been always this, in his experience since 1962, lack of historical preservation and putting up often bland things in their places. And interestingly, I saw a statistic the other day that Tokyo office vacancies are above 6%. And evidently 6% is the magic number to say that you have an oversupply if you have more than that amount vacant. So there's already an oversupply of office space. This plan was created before the pandemic. Do these office buildings actually have potential tenants or not? Or are they going to be white elephants? the National Stadium is underused and bleeding red ink. In fact, it just came out that all of the Olympic venues that were created are not expected to make money. They're going to be losing money, and the government's going to have to pay to keep them up. Why are we building more stadiums? It doesn't make sense. And I think the issue is Japan is addicted to construction. And Japanese politicians love to build things. They feel like it makes them look good. And they also get lots of contributions from construction companies. And from the construction company's point of view, all they want to do is build something.
Right.
And it doesn't matter for them whether anyone makes money off of it or if it makes any kind of economic sense at all. And no one's shared any kind of economic analysis for any of this to show that it makes any sense from the taxpayer's perspective. So never mind the ecological, is it even economically feasible? And probably not. I wanted to share with you sort of, where did this plan come from? And it was these two guys that I've circled. Former Tokyo Mayor Shintaro Ishihara, who passed away recently, and Yoichiro Mori, who is the former Japanese prime minister and a very active figure in the world of sports. And as you may remember, he was the chair of the 2020 Olympic Committee until before his misogynistic remarks came to light and he had to resign from that post. So this is them at the celebration of awarding the 2020 Olympics to Tokyo. And so it was their idea, and there's been lots of information coming out about the discussions at that time, but they cooked this up. And the other thing that I think it's good for everyone to know about this is that the developers have tried to keep this project as hush-hush as possible, because they knew the more scrutiny there would be to the project, the more people would just react the way we're reacting, like, oh my gosh, this makes no sense. So they've followed the letter of the law of what they have to do in terms of public announcements, which is so little. So the only way that people found out that there was going to be a public meeting and some kind of community outreach was there was this small item, and this was in the ward, kind of like the kind of information leaflet thing. And if you live in Tokyo, your ward sends these, once a month or once a quarter. And, does anybody read them? I think maybe people align their bird cages with them. And so that was their only way that they put the information out. Fortunately, a few people who lived in the area saw it and went, but not that many people did. And the other thing we're finding out is, that nearly 1,000 number of trees being chopped down that I mentioned earlier, that was calculated by a Chuo University professor named Ishikawa Sensei. And she went after this meeting and got what plans were available and spent a week walking the park. She's an expert in landscape architecture, so she could read the plans. And she counted herself, well, how many trees or where these buildings are going to go. And it turns out that the developers, they knew what they were planning. They knew, as at least last summer, if not before, that there were going to be all these trees chopped down, but they just didn't happen to mention it. Because again, they wanted as little scrutiny as possible. And right now, the status of the project is that it's the Environmental Assessment Committee is kind of hung up. They've made the project pending. And usually environmental assessments in Japan are kind of rubber stamped, but this one is the environmental assessors are kind of putting their foot down and saying, there's not enough information. We can't guarantee that, that the Ginkgo Avenue won't be damaged, or, that we don't have enough information about the trees and what's going to happen, or that everything's being done to minimize the risks. And so it's pending. Mayor Koike has given instructions to developers, hey, do more public outreach. But their idea of the public outreach is, well, we'll have tree planting ceremonies. And what they really need to do is have this whole project go back to the drawing board. And look at it from ecological standpoint, look at it from historical preservation standpoint, and not from a profit maximization standpoint, which is clearly what the key driving force was to the current plan.
Mm-hmm. Like with I thought with modern technology, architecture, design, all that like knowledge from all over the world, there must be a way to work around to still have the trees there and like at least do something with it. Cutting down it really just, it is just too much, taking
Right.
away the nature and the effort and the culture history that was built there for such a long time. So
Right.
for
Well,
like
well, they could avoid cutting down that many trees if they didn't change up where all the buildings are. So if they kept Jingu Stadium where it is, and either renovated it, or if they have to rebuild it in the same place. And then same for the rugby stadium. Really, both of them should be able to be renovated instead of rebuilt. But if you're going to rebuild them in the same place. The problem is that they're shuffling them around, and the only reason to shuffle them around is to make room for the high rises. So that part of the plan has to go. And because if you're making room for high rises, then it's a domino effect that causes all the other problems. And so really they just need to give up on that because it's so blatantly inappropriate.
So right now, the stage for the petition is you're trying to have the petition gathered, and now is to reach out to the Mitsui company and the Itochu,
yes. So what's happened is we are still collecting signatures on the petition, and here's the QR code of it. We're still collecting them. They're still coming in. The little video that you saw had 81,000 on it, and that was as of the beginning of June. We're over 84,000 now. So we're continuing. The more people sign it, the better, because the number keeps getting quoted in the Japanese press. They care a lot about the number. And we've already submitted what's called in Japanese a yobo show, which is like a request letter, or like a demand letter. Sounds too much like a ransom note, so I guess we'll just call it request letter, but it's our demands. And I've already submitted that to the city, to Meiji Shrine, to Itochu, to the Japan Sports Promotion Council, and to Mitsui Fudosan. What I'm going to do is, when I did that, especially with Itochu and Mitsui Fudosan, I just submitted it to the section in charge of the project. My next thing that I'm going to be doing is mailing it along with a document with all the comments that people put when they sign the petition, and I've analyzed them into categories, and I'm going to send them that together with the request letter, because I'm not sure if these organizations have told their directors, and send it to their board members, to their outside board members, to their auditors, to their people in charge of HR, and not HR, I'm sorry, IR and sustainability, because all these companies, they're talking about ESGs and SDGs and how environmentally great they are, and then they're doing plans like this, and I think investors should be interested in it. So we're going to be trying to reach people within those companies more, as well as we're just trying to get the word out and hoping that different media will write about it. Last year with Yoyogi Park, when it was just a firestorm it seemed like everyone was talking about Yoyogi Park that week. And basically you have to get to that kind of fever pitch to get Yuriko Koike to do anything. So that's what we're aiming for. She doesn't like anyone talking about this. She doesn't like the attention to it. So we just have to be as loud as possible.
Right. Yes. So yes, everyone, if you care about, greenery, if you care about history, culture, please help and sign the petition. This is the QR code, and I'll be also listing the link in the description of this video. Yes, and if Rochelle, if you have any like last message to your to the video viewer, or or your friends, please feel free to say anything.
Oh, certainly. Well, I think, Eileen, that you really summed it up well, that if you care about the environment, if you care about historical preservation, if you care about governments actually listening to what their constituents want, then this is definitely the thing to support, and we'd love to have you support us.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time. I hope everyone please take a minute to consider this, sign this petition, and we will hope we get the numbers in order to reach to the Japan Tokyo government. Take care, Rochelle, and I hope to speak to you soon again.
Okay, great. Thanks so much again for this opportunity.